In this lesson, we're going to look at the editing process of audio. Now, this is slightly different than most other DAWs, just purely because the editing functionality is not as advanced as what you would find in something like Logic. But then they never claim to be either, and there's always workarounds for doing things, okay? So what would happen in something like Logic or Cubase or Pro Tools is you would record this massive long loop here, and then, for instance, I know that I don't want this part here, and I'd be able to delete that. In Ableton, what happens is you keep that, but you actually just set up the start point, okay? And once you set up the start point, it doesn't ever play those bits. So that's just a workaround that you have to do. So here it is here, and I know that I only want bars 11 and 12. So now, although you can see these parts here, I'm only ever going to be at playing these parts. So let's zoom in, and let's have a little bit of a look at some of the really nice functionality. Now, in my opinion, Ableton's got one of the most advanced editors in terms of kind of pitch and rhythms, okay? And it allows you to correct so much of what's happening. And it's called the warp engine. Now, the warp engine is very simple, actually. It's just this area here. And by default, it's turned on. So when you record all your parts in, it comes in flat, and it kind of works out, okay, how fast is this piece? Now, this piece, it knows how fast it is because I recorded it at 95 BPM. Okay, so this is fantastic. So it sets it at 95 BPM, and it assumes that I'm recording to a click, and then it looks for transients. And that's what these markers are here. And it sounds like quite a complex word, but basically it's just looking for points in a beat. Okay, so the transient here, or the most prominent beat here, is this one here. So it's kind of saying, hey, this is probably your first beat. Okay, and it's kind of doing that here. And as you can see, each time I'm ever so slightly off. But from a performance point of view, that's not always a bad thing. So what you can do from that point onwards is you can actually work out if you need to edit those transients. Okay, so by hovering over, you'll see that this grey marker happens. Now, if I double click now, that will turn yellow, and it will give me the ability to edit that transient, okay? So let's just do that. Let's just put this on the beat, okay? So let's go hover over it, double click, and it turns yellow. And now watch what happens. I can just go bump. And now that transient is on the beat. And in turn, it has moved all of these ones as well. So I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to just undo that step, and we're just going to create the transients that we think we're going to want to move. So if we create this one and create this one, and these are obviously, this is obviously our A minor chord coming in, this is obviously our G chord coming in, and then this is our C chord coming in. But now look what happens. Now I've created these 2 points. Look what happens now. As you can see, it didn't move these points that time, whereas before it did, okay? So now when I move this one, you should see that this one stays the same and this one stays the same. Okay? And that's a really important tip when you're dealing with the warp engine. It's just kind of keep in mind that you might want to look ahead and make sure that nothing else is moving, because it will, if you haven't got any other transient markers set up in editing mode like this, it will move everything, okay? So let's just do this last one. So now everything's on the beat. So when I press play, and let's just press stop. So everything's in focus. Now that's our warp engine. If for some reason it's made a mistake, we can actually speed it up using this one, or slow it down using this button here, and we can do that quite radically. Okay. The next thing is, you'll notice actually my clip is quite quiet. So this dial here brings up the decibels, but not of our overall track, but just within the clip. And this is something you have to remember, is anything that's done here is just editing this particular clip. It's not a global parameter, okay? It's just editing this clip. So unlike this one here, this is a global parameter. This applies it to everything, okay? So anything you edit in the rack is going to apply it to everything. Anything you edit inside of the clip by coming over to here, anything edited to here will just apply itself to this parameter here, this container, this clip, okay? So if we brought it up, say 13 decibels, you're going to notice that some noise starts to happen. Now let me take all of these out of focus just so we hear the guitar. And you'll straight away, one thing you'll notice is the sound clip got bigger, and that's quite a nice visual representation. But you also can see these little points here are my noise, okay? So if I press play now, and the louder we get, the more noise you'll hear. And you can hear it coming in there, and that's what we have to be really, really careful about. So what I'm going to do is just bring it up by, say, 3 decibels. There's other ways of dealing with volume rather than just using the gain dials, okay? And that's called compression, and we'll get to compression probably in the next video, but we do need to make it ever so slightly louder. Now, another tool is the transpose. Now, this does it in semitones. Excuse me. Now, semitone on your keyboard is the transition between the next note. So whether that be the next white note or the next note, say white onto the next black note. That's just a semitone. And in every octave, you've got 12 semitones. And then you've got these cents. Now, every semitone is made up of 100 cents. This will only go up to 50 before it then moves on to the next semitone, okay? So plus 50 or minus 50. Let's have a look at some of these other functions here. So you've got edit. If you want to edit this sample in, say, Logic or Cubase, you can set that up to route it into Logic, edit it there, and then save it out. This button's quite cool. This is the reverse button. So if we press reverse, it will reverse my whole clip. Now if we press play, let's see what happens. Let's undo that. So you've got this nice reverse button that you can use. Transpose, what else have we got? Obviously we looked at the loop. I think that's pretty much all I want to say. I'm going to show you the transpose button just so you can see what happens there. And I'm going to be quite radical and take it up by an octave. Okay, so let's press play again. Put it in reverse as well. If for some reason you have issues, let me undo some of this actually. If for some reason you have issues with your computer's performance, you've got this RAM button here, and you can actually load samples into RAM. It's not recommended really, but if you are having issues, you can kind of have a little play around with whether to have the clips in RAM mode or loading straight from the hard drive, okay? So that's pretty much all I'm going to say about that. I'm going to draw your attention to these two buttons here, the envelope clip and the launch clip, okay? Now this is quite an interesting one. The launch clip basically says how you want this parameter to act. So if the quantized value is left to global, when you stop, it will stop at what this value says, so currently 1 bar. However, if you want to make faster transitions, so you want it maybe in 16s, let's just show you that. I can change it to 16s, then I can press the play button, and then when I stop this, it'll stop a lot quicker. Okay, and actually it didn't affect the stop value, but it did affect the start value, where you can actually just trigger it a lot quicker, which is quite interesting. Okay, that's as much I'm going to say about that. So have a little play around with that, and in the next video we're going to look at just creating another part and layering some effects for this Next to Me track, okay?